So it's Halloween, and I thought I would read a story. Big surprise, Snow White. Here we go. Once upon a time, in the middle of winter, when the snowflakes were falling like feathers on the earth, a queen sat at a window framed in black ebony and sewed. And as she sewed and gazed out at the white landscape, she pricked her finger with the needle, and 3 drops of blood fell on the snow outside. The red droplets showed so clearly against the white snow that she thought to herself, "Oh, what I wouldn't give to have a child as white as snow, and as red as blood, and as black as ebony." Soon after, her wish was granted, and a little daughter was born to her, with skin as white as snow, lips and cheeks as red as blood, and hair as black as ebony. They named her Snow White, but not long after the child's birth, the queen died. After a year, the king married again. His new wife was a beautiful woman, but so proud and overbearing that she could not stand any rival to her beauty. She had a magic mirror, and when she stood before it, gazing at her own reflection, she would ask, "Mirror, mirror on the wall, who is the fairest of us all?" The mirror always replied, "Queen, you are the fairest of them all." Then she was happy, for she knew the mirror always spoke the truth. But Snow White was growing prettier every day, and when she was 7 years old, she was as beautiful as the springtime, and fairer even than the queen herself. One day, when the queen asked her mirror the usual question, it replied, "My lady, you are fair, 'tis true, but Snow White is fairer than you." Then the queen flew into the most awful rage, and turned every shade of green in her jealousy. From that hour she hated poor Snow White, and every day her envy, hatred, and malice grew. At last she could endure Snow White's presence no longer, and calling a huntsman to her, she said, "Take the child into the woods. You must kill her, and bring me proof that she is dead." The huntsman had to obey his queen. He led Snow White out into the woods, but just as he was drawing out his knife to slay her, Snow White began to cry, and she said, "Oh, dear huntsman, spare my life, and I will promise to run into the wild forest and never return home again." The huntsman paused for a moment. Then, because she was so young and sweet and pretty, he took pity on her, and said, "You are free to go, poor child," for he secretly thought that the wild beast would soon eat her up. But his heart felt lighter, because he hadn't had to do the terrible deed himself. Then the hunter killed a young deer instead, and he brought the animal's heart to his queen for proof that he had carried out her evil command. Now when poor Snow White found herself alone in the big forest, she didn't know which way to turn, but she knew that she must run as far from the queen as she could go. There were so many strange noises in the forest, and the towering dark trees and their looming shadows looked fierce and ominous. She felt so frightened that she didn't know what to do, but she ran like the wind, over sharp stones and through bramble bushes and across mountains. Sometimes the creatures of the wild darted past her, bears and wolves and other beasts, but they did her no harm. She ran as far as her legs could carry her, and as evening approached she saw a little house. Exhausted, she went inside to rest. Everything was very small in the little house, but very clean and very neat. In the middle of the room there stood a little table, covered with a white tablecloth, and 7 little plates and forks and spoons and knives and cups. Side by side, against the wall, there were 7 little beds, and covered with quilts as white as snow. Snow White felt so hungry and so thirsty that she ate a bit of bread and some food from each plate, and then drank a few drops from each cup. Then, feeling tired and sleepy, she lay down on one of the beds, but it wasn't comfortable. So she tried all the others in turn, but one was too long, and another was too short, and it was only when she got to the 7th that she found a bed that was just right. So she lay down upon it and fell asleep. When it got quite dark, the owners of the little house returned. There were 7 dwarfs who worked in the mines deep down in the heart of the mountain. They entered with their 7 little lamps, and they soon saw that someone had been in the room. The first dwarf said, "Who's been sitting in my chair?" The second said, "Who's been eating my bread?" The third said, "Who's been tasting my dinner?" The fourth said, "Who's been eating off my plate?" The 5th said, "Who's been using my fork?" The 6th said, "Who's been cutting with my knife?" And the 7th said, "Who's been drinking out of my cup?" Then the first dwarf looked around and saw a little hollow in his bed, and he asked, "Who's been lying on my bed?" And the others came running, and when they saw their beds, cried out, "Somebody has been lying on ours too." But when the seventh dwarf came to his bed, he jumped back in amazement, for there was Snow White, fast asleep. So he called to the others, who came hurrying over. When they saw Snow White lying there, they gasped with surprise. "Goodness gracious!" they cried. "What a beautiful child!" They were so enchanted by her beauty that they did not wake her. The seventh dwarf had to sleep with his companions 1 hour in each bed in order to get through the night. In the morning, when Snow White saw the 7 little dwarfs, she felt very frightened. But they were so friendly and kind that she said, "Hello, I am Snow White." Then she told them how her stepmother had ordered her put to death, and how the huntsman had spared her life, and how she had run the whole day long till she had come to their house. The dwarfs, when they heard Snow White's sad story, asked her, "Will you stay and keep house for us, cook, do the washing, sew, and knit? We could share our home with you and be your friends." "Yes," answered Snow White, "I will gladly do all you ask." And so she lived with them. Every morning the dwarfs went into the mountain to dig for gold, and in the evening, when they returned home, Snow White always had their supper ready for them. But during the day the girl was left all alone, so the good dwarfs warned her, saying, "Beware of your stepmother. She will soon find out that you are here, and whatever you do, don't let anyone into the house." The queen, believing Snow White to be dead, asked her mirror, "Mirror, mirror, hanging there, who in all the land's most fair?" And the mirror replied, "My lady queen, you are fair, 'tis true, but Snow White is fairer than you. Snow White, who dwells with the 7 little men, is as fair as you, as fair again." When the queen heard these words, she was so horrified that she could not speak, for the mirror always spoke the truth, and she knew now the huntsman must have deceived her, and Snow White was still alive. She pondered day and night how she might destroy Snow White, for as long as she felt she had a rival in the land, her jealous heart knew no rest. At last she hit upon a plan. She stained her face and dressed herself as an old peddler woman, so that she was quite unrecognizable. In this disguise she crossed 7 mountains until she came to the house of the 7 dwarfs. When she arrived, she knocked at the door, calling out, "Pretty wares to sell." Snow White peeped out the window and said, "Good day, what do you have there?" "Nice wares, pretty wares," answered the woman, "lace of every shade and description." And she held up one that was made of brightly colored silk. "Surely I can let the honest woman in," thought Snow White. So she unlocked the door and bought the prettiest lace. "Good gracious, child," said the old woman, "how beautiful you are! Come, I'll lace your dress up properly." Snow White, suspecting no evil, agreed. But the old woman laced her so quickly and so tightly that it took Snow White's breath away, and she fell down dead. "Now you are no longer the fairest," said the wicked old woman, and she hurried away. In the evening the 7 dwarfs came home. What a fright they got when they saw their dear Snow White lying on the floor, still and cold. They lifted her up tenderly, and when they saw how tightly laced her dress was, they cut the lacing, and she began to breathe, and gradually came back to life. When the dwarfs heard the whole story, they said, "You can be sure the old woman was none other than the queen. In the future you must be sure to let no one in if we are not here in the house with you." As soon as the wicked queen got home, she asked her mirror, "Mirror, mirror, hanging there, who in all the land's most fair?" And the mirror answered, as before, "My lady queen, you are fair, 'tis true, but Snow White is fairer than you. Snow White, who dwells with the 7 little men, is as fair as you, as fair again." The queen became as pale as death when she realized that Snow White was still alive. "This time," she said to herself, "I will think of something that will put an end to her once and for all." Using her witchcraft, the queen made a poisonous comb. Then she put on a different disguise and again crossed the 7 mountains. When she reached the house of the 7 dwarfs, she called out, "Pretty wares for sale." Snow White looked out the window. "You must go away, for I am not let anyone in," she said. "But surely you are not forbidden to look out?" asked the old woman, and she held up the beautiful comb. Snow White liked the comb so much that she forgot the dwarf's warning and opened the door. "Now let me comb your hair properly for you," said the old woman. Poor Snow White again suspected no evil, but hardly had the comb touched her hair than the poison worked and she fell down unconscious. The wicked woman cackled as she hurried away. Fortunately, the 7 dwarfs soon returned home. When they saw Snow White lying dead on the ground, they knew that her wicked stepmother had been back. They found the poisonous comb, and when they pulled it out of her hair, Snow White woke up and told her story. "You must remember our warning," said the dwarfs. "Do not open the door to anyone."